Good afternoon, this is Occupier Caitlin. I'm coming to you live from Corinthian Baptist Church here in Des Moines. And this is Black Des Moines Voices, Seldom Heard. I couldn't put that title in, so I changed it a little bit. Right now people are getting goodies. But, so there will be some video being shown there on the wall, and I'll reposition my tripod when that starts. So I'll shut the lights off, and so right now people are just getting a hot dog and chips and other goodies. This should be quite interesting. I'm doing this for those who are not able to attend in person, and as a backup for the church's own stream, just in case it goes down. In fact, someone just asked after I got my supper that if I was live, and I said, yeah, I'm already live. Right now on the screen, they're just showing pictures of different people from Des Moines history. I'm going to go ahead and change tripod position. I didn't want to go in the middle because then it might make it hard for people to see. Plus, I'm going to have a clear line on the speaker, so it'll be at a bit of an angle. I do apologize for that, but this is actually a little bit better position. Actually, I might just shorten it up and put it on top of the table. I'm going to try that. Pardon me shaking this, I'm actually going to put the tripod up on the table.
How you doing, sister?
Good?
You doing good?
Yep.
God bless you.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to take this time to welcome everybody to Brilliant Baptist Church, and thank you for coming out this evening to share this wonderful documentary with us. Lori and I were privileged to see this at our job at Principal a couple of weeks ago, and I was very touched by what I saw, who I saw, and what I heard, and we both decided we wanted to share it with the community. We're going to get started first off with scripture. And I'm reading from Proverbs 16:3, the King James Version. Commit thy works unto the Lord, and thy thoughts shall be established. Amen. Amen. Just a few housekeeping. Everybody that's been here before knows the bathrooms are right outside the door. Be careful moving around because we're going to be turning all of the lights off, and just so that you don't fall and hurt yourself, we just want to warn everybody to be careful as you move around. And now I'd like to invite Deacon Milton Young up to give us a prayer.
I'm not going to prolong, but I just want to say welcome to, because I love you and do some beautiful things here. Oh, Heavenly Father, we come here once again, Father, giving you honor, praise, and glory. Truly, Father, it's all about you. Now, Father, we're going to go back to the long time ago. Father, I came here in 1956 myself, and most of these people I know. But Father, they left an open place in my heart. That told them that one thing I never forget. I have buried quite a few close friends. But I tell you this here, we are here to celebrate. Celebrate a day like we never had before. Now, Father, we just ask you to take control of this place. Let our heart beat like it should be. That's all you bless in your Son, Jesus Christ's name. Aid of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you.
Okay, so my job is to help set up the documentary we're about to see, but a couple more housekeeping items. We have plenty of hot dogs, we have plenty of popcorn, we have plenty of candy, and we don't want to take any of it home. So feel free to roam around during the documentary and refresh yourself. Again, be careful because it will be very dark. I'm going to try to tell you a little bit about the writer and producer of this documentary, Verda L. Williams. I've not met her, but I've spoken to her by phone several times. She is doing okay, but she's not in the best health, so she can't be with us tonight. I discovered this documentary on Facebook through the wonders of Facebook. Someone put a link to this documentary that's on YouTube. So I said, let me check this out. I've never heard of this. I watched the documentary and I was so moved. I wanted it to be shown at my company where I work, where Lori and I work, Principal Financial Group. And so I did some research and I found that her notes and her archives from the making of this documentary are at Iowa State University's library archives. So I called the library and I found out a little bit more information about the documentary. And I said, is Berta still alive? And they're like, yeah, she is. And I said, well, do you know how I can reach her? They said, well, no, we don't have her number, but the director of this documentary, Denny Goodrich, still works here at Iowa State. I said, do you have his number? So I called Denny Goodrich, and he directed this film we're gonna see. Talked to him, he's going to retire in May from Iowa State University after 30 plus years. And I chatted with him, he said, oh, I still keep in touch with Berta all the time. I'm sure she would love to have this shown at Principal. And so that's kind of how this all got started. So we showed it at the Principal as part of our Black History Month celebration a couple weeks ago. We had about 80 of our employees attend over their lunch hour, and they loved it. Berta is a native of Des Moines. You'll hear later where she grew up in Des Moines, what side of town. She is a graduate of Drake University as well as Iowa State University. She got her master's from Drake and her bachelor's from Iowa State in film production and television journalism. I forgot to bring her resume, but I'll tell you it's 17 pages long. You see all the movies from the 80s and 90s that she was a production assistant for or lead producer for, television shows. She's worked for 31 different television networks around the country. She was a host of her own television talk show out of New York City for 8 years. And she's a tool for Iowa. And so you're gonna see, like Lori said, lots of faces that you may recognize, places you may recognize that are long gone now. But we hope you enjoy Black Des Moines Voices Seldom Heard. At the end of the documentary, which takes about an hour, we're going to also play an interview that we did with Berta about 3 weeks ago. Denny Goodrich went to her apartment and interviewed her because we knew she couldn't come to the Principal. And so you're gonna get to hear her today reflecting on what it was like to make this documentary 30 years ago. It aired on WOI Channel 5 in September of 1986. But it traces the history of blacks in Des Moines from the mid-1800s all the way up to the mid-80s. So, oh, and then following Berta's interview that we're gonna share with you, we're gonna have Terry L. Wells come up, and you'll see in this documentary what urban development did to the Black community in Des Moines in the 60s, and how it destroyed our legacy of wealth and tore it down. So Terry's gonna come up, because it's kind of timely, the predicament that Burns United Methodist Church is in, right to our south here. And he's gonna share with you ways you can get involved in preserving the heritage and legacy of Burns, which I believe you'll hear in the documentary is the first Black Methodist church in Des Moines ever built. So Terry will come up at the end of the evening and talk to you about how you can get involved with that. So I've talked long enough, so enjoy Voices Seldom Heard.
When you think of Des Moines, what comes to mind? Trees, family, friends. When you think of Des Moines, what comes to mind?
Insurance. It's a beautiful place.
Of all the places I've been, I think it's a pretty good place to marry, raise a family.
Oh, I think a very wonderful place to raise a family, and just a good education system.
When you think of Des Moines, what comes to your mind?
Just making it, living and making it. Well, it's good living, peaceful. Yeah, got a lot of opportunities for young people. Just living good, really.
Well, I think it's a beautiful place to live. It's
almost like a mosque. It's a place to grow, and her colleges are the best colleges that I know of in the United States.
I'll always come back.
It is difficult to know where to begin the story of blacks in Des Moines. Perhaps the beginning. Blacks were first brought to this country in 1620 by Dutch traders and sold to the colonists as slaves. Although there were nearly 600,000 slaves at the time of the American Revolution, 4,000 black soldiers were in the Continental Army. Men like Crispus Attucks, Peter Salem, and Salem Poor proved to be brave and loyal Americans. Although there was talk of the gradual emancipation of the slave, when the Constitution was drafted, slavery was acknowledged in several sections of the document. In 1804, Lewis and Clark set out to find the source of the Missouri River. Clark took his black servant York with him. York became the first black to set foot in Iowa and eventually won his freedom as a result of his invaluable services as an interpreter and food gatherer for the expedition. By the way, the Indians loved his black skin. Around 1835, Colonel Stephen Kearny and 150 dragoons came to the first Fort Des Moines near the point where the Raccoon and Des Moines rivers meet. He was said to have brought a slave woman as a family servant with him.
We will believe in freedom and not rest until
Back about 1843, the first blacks reported to have lived in Polk County were 200 slaves owned by a Fort Des Moines interpreter, Joseph Smart.
But brother, when Smart no longer needed the women, he took them south and sold them as slaves.
I know, according to the Missouri Compromise, Iowa was a free territory. But there was an unwritten Army law that allowed officers to own slaves. An unfortunate beginning for blacks in Des Moines.
No, not good at all.
Although the actions of Joseph Smart are reprehensible, there were a small group of whites in Des Moines who were interested in the welfare of blacks. In the 1850s, blacks passed through Des Moines on the Underground Railroad. And in 1858, John Brown escorted a group through the town and stopped at the home of Isaac Brandt. In 1862, a group of Missouri runaway slaves arrived in Des Moines and stayed. One of those 13 slaves was Jeff Logan. Logan worked at a number of odd jobs and eventually began his first of 21 years of service for Wesley Redhead. He also worked at the State House. Under special orders from the War Department, the 1st Regiment Iowa African Infantry was organized on July 27, 1863. Although there were probably less than 1,500 blacks living in Iowa at that time, when the fit and able rendezvoused in Keokuk, there were 6 companies of blacks prepared to fight for freedom in the Civil War. After the Civil War, more blacks came to Des Moines, among them Robert Hyde. At that time, 1876, the black neighborhood was around 9th and Walnut, and Hyde erected a small store in this area. He was the inventor of H&H soap, which is marketed nationally today. Although Hyde sold his cleaning business to his partner, T.W. Henry, around 1907, he continued to dabble in real estate. developed other formulas for soaps and cleaners, and invented an electric turning wheel and something called the diamond wallpaper machine. Mr. Hyde also had a sort of employment bureau, which was located at 321 4th and called the Hyde Intelligence and Labor Office. Hyde believed strongly in a good education, and all of his children went to college, with daughter Ada Hyde Johnson becoming one of the first 2 black women to graduate from the University of Iowa in 1912. On June 8, 1894, the Iowa Bystander published its first issue. J.L. Thompson was editor. Although it was thought to be the first and only black paper in the state, we found this photocopy of the Weekly Avalanche, which was published in 1893. In any event, according to the Bystander's October 5, 1894 issue, there were thought to be about 1,500 blacks in Polk County. They were said to have owned some of the finest farms and some of the best property in Des Moines. Among them were professional men, businessmen, mechanics, laborers, and miners. And speaking of miners, we would be remiss not to mention the coal mining towns of Buxton and Mutchakinock. In the fall of 1879, the miners of Mutchakinock, or Mutchie, voted to strike for higher wages. The Consolidation Coal Company met their demands until the outstanding contracts were fulfilled. Then the company tried to return the miners to their old pay rate. The miners struck. The company sent an agent to Virginia to recruit black labor. About 70 blacks arrived in Mutchie in March of 1880. There are varying reports, but there is a possibility that 30 of the original 100 Virginia hopefuls met with violent deaths upon arriving. After a time, however, word went back to Virginia that there were opportunities to be had in Iowa, and more blacks left their plantation jobs and headed for the state.
My father was born in Mutchakinock, Iowa. He moved to Buxton. His parents had moved here in the probably late 70s or early 80s from, I think it was Charlottesville, Virginia.
In 1901, the Consolidation Coal Company moved nearly all of its operations to a new site called Buxton.
My paternal grandparents came from Kentucky, Seldom, Buxton area, because of the job opportunities in coal mines. There's quite a black community because the opportunities for blacks were in the mines. My maternal grandparents came from Virginia, where my grandfather had been a brakeman on a train there. He came and settled in this area, settled in the Dallas County area, and preached up there, also worked in mines, had 11 children.
Although nearly 4,000 miners were transferred to Buxton, it continued to grow and more blacks were brought in, this time from Alabama. According to the Buxton Eagle, of the 5,000 residents, 4,500 were black. These figures are challenged, however, by the 1905 census records, which show Buxton's population to have had 2,700 blacks and 1,991 whites. But in 1914, the demand for Iowa's coal declined and many were unemployed. In time, residents began migrating to other coal camps out of state, Fort Waterloo, Cedar Rapids, and Des Moines. One such migrant was a famous trial attorney, George Woodson, who was instrumental in organizing both the Iowa Negro Bar Association in 1901 and later the National Negro Bar Association in 1925. Woodson's law partner was S. Joe Brown, the first black liberal arts graduate of the University of Iowa. It is largely through Brown's efforts that the NAACP came to Des Moines. In 1915, Brown and his wife Sue organized an open meeting at Corinthian Baptist Church where the NAACP's National Board Chairman, Joel Spingarn, was the guest speaker. Iowa Governor George W. Clark addressed the audience, then introduced Spingarn. At meetings then, over 100 persons had joined. S. Joe Brown became the first president. The membership was comprised of both blacks and prominent whites, including the governor and a number of high-ranking city officials. Within a year, the Des Moines branch ranked 9th in size compared to other branches nationwide. But there was no time to rest on laurels. In 1916, the NAACP Legal Committee faced its first court test. A local theater had scheduled D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation, which was loosely based on a novel called The Klansman. The national office was angered by the slanderous treatment of blacks and ordered their branches to prevent its showing. The Des Moines case was based on a 1907 ordinance that had been written by S. Joe Brown, barring any further productions of the play The Klansman, which had a brief run in Des Moines. Although there was tremendous biracial support for this effort, a municipal court allowed the movie to be shown on the grounds that it did not violate the 1907 ordinance. S. Joe Brown's presidency ended in 1917 when he became a candidate for the officers' training camp for black troops at Fort Des Moines. It was the first and only military training school of its kind in the nation. More than 500 of the estimated 1,500 men who were accepted were college graduates. After the 4-month training program, successful candidates were commissioned and sent to camps where black soldiers were being trained. Des Moines Attorney Lieutenant J.B. Morris was assigned to Camp Dodge. The first draft yielded 127 black troops. Most of the men were from Keokuk, Buxton, and Des Moines. There were also soldiers from Minnesota, Illinois, South Dakota, Alabama, Tennessee, and Mississippi. Although there were white soldiers at Camp Dodge, things were still segregated. In fact, 3 black soldiers were hanged for allegedly attacking a white woman. What was Des Moines like in 1918? Here's what longtime resident George Nichols has to say.
Well, I thought it was a big city because I was a farm boy. And I thought the Union Station was about the grandest thing I'd ever seen. Of course, you know, they had railroads those days. King Young over the Wabash.
Where'd you come from?
Louisiana, Missouri. Louisiana is on the Mississippi River, about 25 miles south of Mark Twain's old home in Hannibal.
How were opportunities for blacks when you got here?
Pretty good. You have to remember that in those days there was such a thing as common labor. That don't exist anymore. So that left a great deal of work for the black people. Those days they had janitors, elevator operators, window washers, men who worked with shovels and picks and wheelbarrows. That's something that don't exist today. There's no such thing as common labor.
Did the 20s roar in Des Moines? Because of the war, more jobs were available for blacks, and due to Southern migration, 1920 became a peak year in the number of blacks in Iowa. Although blacks were scattered throughout Des Moines, the majority lived on the west side of the city. Housing ranged from hovels to well-built homes. For the first time, blacks were able to move from menial labor to semi-skilled and skilled labor jobs. It's also important to note that the number of black soldiers in Des Moines created a demand for black business, and enterprising persons opened restaurants, pool rooms, barbershops, you name it, Black Des Moines had it. It was also a busy period for the NAACP. In 1920, Pearl DeJarnette, an assistant attendance officer for the public schools, proposed that all of Des Moines' 800 black students be placed in one 8-room school. The NAACP staged a mass rally at St. Paul AME Church, and several resolutions were proposed. In the end, the school board and the city superintendent wrote to the NAACP explaining that their policy did not include segregation. Other cases during those years involved desegregation of beaches and parks, theaters, and housing. The Dottie Blackburn theater case actually resulted in the conviction of a white for racial discrimination, and Dorothy Quayle was able to keep her house in an exclusive all-white neighborhood. By this time, Lieutenant J.B. Morris had returned from France and resumed his law practice. He served as Deputy Polk County Treasurer and as President of the NAACP. He also purchased a bystander in 1922.
My grandfather bought the Iowa Bystander right in the early 1920s, published it from roughly 21 or 22 up until about 1972, for a period of approximately 50 years. And during that time, although there were several black publications that came and left at various times, none of them had the hang-on capacity that the Bystanders had, but primarily for that 50 years, the only real source of news interesting to black folks that anyone around here ever got. Bystander office, when my grandfather first took over, it was also the Morris Law. Well, back then it was just the Morris Law because he was the only one there. In the 1920s, was at one time located above what was a Ku Klux Klan meeting place. And as I understand it, as my grandfather explained it, at various times the Klan tried to run them out, tried to scare them out, perhaps at times tried to buy them out to get them to stop publishing the newspaper, but that sort of intimidation and the threats that they were making were not sufficient to close the newspaper down. And they continued publication without abatement, really, until my grandfather sold the rights to the newspaper to another party in 1972.
Marguerite Cawthorn recalls her family roots and life in Des Moines in the 20s.
Well, coming to Des Moines, it was a matter of a job for my father. He had been working in Alville with the Ingram Manning family, who owned the South Suburban Railroad. When it was sold, Dad, of course, was not able to continue with his work as a lineman because the union was not accepting black people as in the union as linemen. So that he was looking for employment, and my grandmother moved to Des Moines. The dad was looking for work. He did find a job in Des Moines as a janitor in an apartment. So when I was about 7 years of age, we moved to Des Moines.
And what were some of those experiences in growing up in Des Moines?
Well, really, personally, I had a very nice experience. When I say nice, it wasn't a frustrating one. We lived in a white neighborhood because the apartment was in a white neighborhood. I happened to be the only black child at Greenwood School, where the social activities and your close friendships, I found those at our church relationship, which was St. Paul AME Church.
And in high school?
High school, I went to Roosevelt High School. My first year in high school was spent at Old West High, 15th Street and Center. And Roosevelt opened in the fall of, I almost have to count back, 25 I guess it was. And I was the only black student in Roosevelt High School when it opened. The second year, there was one other girl, Julia Proctor, who was formerly Julia Mandel. And she and I were the only two blacks at Roosevelt High School at that time. We both graduated, so I in place 6 and she in place 7.
What or how were blacks treated in Des Moines at that time in your formative years?
Well, there was very much prejudice in the entire town. You couldn't eat in any of the eating places downtown. The jobs were very scarce. The only jobs the blacks could hold were domestic jobs, service jobs, janitorial kinds of things. There were one or two exceptions, but this was the main part for the kinds of jobs which could be held. Oh, and I might add one other thing too, in terms of schools and high school. There was a very strong desire for the school system to not want blacks to swim in the swimming pools at all. So any excuse that you could get to get out of swimming, they were very happy to have you do it. For example, I played enormous when I was at high school. So I didn't have to bother with me, you see, in terms of the swimming. But there was that desire.
They did not want blacks in the swimming pool.
No.
They thought some of the blackness would go off into the water.
Well, I guess they thought it might rub off their faith. They were not willing for it.
The church was perhaps the center of social life, with Burns Methodist Episcopal being the oldest, having been organized in 1866. However, there were a number of educational and social clubs for women, among them the National and State Federation of Women's Clubs and the National Association of Colored Women's Clubs. There were 14 secret societies, including Masonic Lodges, Odd Fellows, Knights Templars, Knights of Pythias, United Brothers of Friendship, and the Elks. First World War in the 20s, blacks had made some economic progress. But with the early stages of the Depression creeping into existence, the black labor force was the first to be affected. The black worker became a competitor, and prejudice spread like a cancer. In 1930 Iowa, out of the total black population of 14,426, a little more than half, 7,931, were gainfully employed.
I would have had to have gone south had I wanted to teach school, and that was not my people. I had plans to go on to law school, but fortunately or unfortunately, whichever way you wish to look at it, there was a black woman, Effie Watkins, and that's E-F-F-I-E Watkins, who was the probationer officer in the Polk County Juvenile Court. She died in May of 1930. I graduated in June and applied for the job along with several others. And fortunately, I was hired and started working in September of that year as the juvenile court worker. And of course, in those days, all social workers carried separate caseloads. They had white males to handle white male cases. They had white females to handle white female cases. I, being black, had the total black caseload of boys, girls, dependent, and neglected children. And all caseloads were segregated on the basis of race.
But after trying to find work and whatnot in Missouri back in the 30s, it was kind of difficult, so we decided to come back to Moines, relocate his family here, and so he did.
What kind of work did you do?
Basically, my dad was a mechanic, an engineer type guy. He was working for a company called Spencer & Kellogg's that preceded Cargill. And in an industrial accident, he lost an arm, and so he had to get out of that profession. And then he began to work for the city, for the fire department.
How easy was it for a black to get a job in the city?
Well, in those days, believe me, it was not easy. Most of them worked in the parks department or the streets department, cleaning the streets and whatnot. My father was a little more fortunate in that he was able to get a job with the park department and worked in the cemetery.
What brought you to Des Moines?
My major professor at Tennessee State in Nashville, Tennessee, was an alumnus of Drake. He encouraged cut me to study law, and I did.
What were things like then? And when was that?
Very bad. Fall of 1939. Very bad. I could not stay on the campus, could not eat anywhere on the campus, and could not socialize with the white students. And I was only black also in school at that time.
Did you find the black community? Did you find the social life, or you were isolated?
Yeah, I found my social life in the black community, yes. And the black community was very helpful to bring me in, you know. I started going really back to church, and Brother Robinson put his arms around me and treated me as though I was his son.
How were blacks received at that time?
What do you mean?
In Des Moines, I'm asking, I suppose, was there a lot of racism?
If you stayed in your place, you could make it all right. And I was from the South, so I was starting up to stay in my place until I got to law school.
When you think of Des Moines, what comes to mind?
Better place to live. A place with not too much excitement. Oh, I think of a growing city. A city that's growing by leaps and bounds, and I don't know when it's going to stop.
So I don't care too much about it, but I have to tell you.
Nice city, I guess. Boring.
Well, I think of a city that's on the road with a lot of development and great opportunities for everyone if they're used to their advantage.
I try not to think too much. I think Des Moines is growing real fast. I think minorities need to get better organized so they can play their role in that development.
I used to live in South Dakota and I moved back to Des Moines because it was better for my children and they liked it here, and I always come back to Des Moines, I always do.
Good morning, honey. You old bluey say. Good morning, honey. Thought we said goodbye last night. I turned them tossed until it seemed you had gone. But here you are with the dawn.
By 1940, 44% of the black house dwellers in Iowa owned their homes. Politically speaking, 3/4 of Iowa's blacks were Republicans. Charles P. Howard, J.G. Brown, and A.A. Alexander had all served as chairman of the Negro Division of the Republican Party. Later, Attorney Howard was to serve as the keynote speaker for Henry Wallace at the 1948 Progressive Party Convention. He is called Alexander the Great by the University of Iowa, where he became the first black to graduate from the school's College of Engineering and to play on its football team. He was a mighty builder of bridges and viaducts, and although he had what Ebony magazine called the nation's most successful interracial business, Archie Alfonso Alexander did not forget his people. While building bridges and freeways in our nation's capital in this era, Alexander outfoxed racist union policies for separate drinking fountains and restrooms by using paper drinking cups and by labeling the two restrooms skilled and unskilled. It is estimated that he and his partner built over 300 projects. And in 1954, President Dwight David Eisenhower chose Alexander as the governor of Virgin Islands. He was sworn in on April 9, 1954. One of our first ladies of Des Moines found herself in the bright lights of the big city in 1940, but only because she had received training and encouragement from her parents and the local branch of the Y. Here's Catherine Williams.
I learned to dance here as a child here in Des Moines. I would go to the Y dancing lessons. My mother saw I had those. And I was in recitals, and as I came up through high school, I began to dance with a young man who do dates for dancing and earned a little money that way. I can remember my mother let me turn the rugs back in the living room, and we practiced on the hardwood floors. I went to New York in probably around 1940 because I went to New York again, selected to go to work in the Apollo Theater there, and left the Apollo after a year to tour with Bill Robinson in the Hopicado. I worked the World's Fair. He had the show there, the Hopicado, and then I went on the road with that show, came back to Des Moines, as a matter of fact, with that show, and played at KRNT, which was a thrill for me too. It was a thrill for my folks to be able to see me do a professional dancing.
With the bombing of Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, and once again with war, came change. But never forget this quote: the more things change, the more they stay the same. Just as a special recreational center had been set up for black troops in Des Moines during the First World War, Des Moines blacks mobilized to offer a USO for this new war's soldiers. But this time, there was something different. 40 black women, all college graduates, had been selected to train at Fort Des Moines along with 400 white women. They would eventually become officer trainers of enlisted women. The whites had arrived.
World War II brought about an emergency of people to work. And President F.D.R. Roosevelt, FDR, had his executive order regarding equal employment. This opened up any number of jobs in terms of employment. We had the Solar aircraft that came into Des Moines, the black trades jobs, particularly as well. We had the munitions plant out near Ankeny that opened up jobs. One of the other changes that has taken place, and this kind of came along at that time, was being able to eat any place that you wanted to. This was started primarily by the blacks who were in Des Moines during those early years. And they went into one of the restaurants downtown, and they were neighbors, and they were told they couldn't be served, and they threatened to tear the place down if they were not served. This was part of the opening.
In 1946, Harriet Curley was hired as the first black school teacher in the Des Moines school system. Not everyone was pleased.
It was also the year in which Harriet Bruce, who was then Harriet Curley, got a job in Des Moines, and she was the daughter of a school custodian, and it was thought that the opportunity should be given to her, but they wanted to hire just one person to see how it would work. It seemed that there was quite a bit of concern about her being successful. It turned out that she was quite successful, even though there was some opposition at first, and really set the stage for the increased hiring of minorities at that time.
And in 1947, Edna Griffin hit town.
We arrived and found that blacks weren't being served at Cat's drugstore. What did you do? We decided that we would go into Cat's, and if we refused service, then we would go to court. And I was prepared to be a witness. There was one other person who was willing also to be a witness. But the windfall which came to us was the waitress. who was prepared to testify that she had been ordered not to serve us. We almost got served that day, and we were going to be very upset if we hadn't. But evidently she did get a signal not to serve us. And it wasn't too long after that, a few months, she lost her job. You know, any white person is so stupid that they don't know they're not supposed to serve black people. But then, cut it on such a job. We spent a year looking for that woman and found her. And she showed up in court to testify on our behalf.
And the result was?
We won. And I think we won primarily because of her testimony. I'll be real honest. Because I would have been considered an agitator, out looking for trouble, out looking to, to make money, to help our finances, by suing places that didn't serve. You want to think about that a minute? I didn't make nothing for all of the period that we were involved with the Katz case to pay my babysitters. But that's not what I was there for.
Now, in winning the Katz drugstore case, did that then, did other businesses follow kind, or were more suits necessary?
Well, Katz was appealed to the Supreme Court, the Iowa Supreme Court. Our battle was to get it enforced in Des Moines, the Public Accommodations Act. Because he appealed it to the Supreme Court, Iowa Supreme Court, that brought the enforcement for the entire state, which was very good, of course.
What a difference a day made. 24 little hours.
All right. Okay. You win. I'm in love with you. Well, all right. Okay. You win. Baby, what can I do? I'll do anything you say. It's just got to be that way.
Tell your mama, tell your pa, I'm gonna sing it like the Arkansas boy. If you don't do right, if you don't do right.
In the 10 years between 1950 and 1960, the black population in Iowa grew, and still blacks were less than 1% of the total population. Des Moines, of course, had the largest black population in the state. On June 17, 1951, the Argonne Armory Band performed at the official opening of the Wilkie House. Its history is one of transformation and change. It began in 1917 as the War Recreation Board of Des Moines. In 1920, the name was changed to Community Service of Des Moines. In 1933, to the Negro Community Center. In 1945, the Gardner Coles Foundation awarded funds to the center to erect a new building. The foundation asked that a plaque honoring Wendell Wilkie be placed somewhere in the building, but the board decided to dedicate the facility to Wilkie's memory because of his belief in one world. Many well-known figures have visited the community center over the years, among them Eleanor Roosevelt and that great pillar of strength and conviction, Mary McLeod Bethune, the founder of Bethune-Cookman College. In all of those years, Mrs. Lillian Edmonds was the force and power behind what Mrs. Marguerite Cawthorn calls the Black Country Club of Des Moines.
Blacks generally, in those days, would congregate at the Wilkie House or the Crocker Branch Y, located down on Keosauqua. It was for blacks, go to swimming pool, basically black. I can't remember white kids ever coming there in any great numbers, maybe one or two. But no blacks would go to Berlin, for example, which was the other major pool at that time. That was strictly white swimming. Blacks did not go.
Center Street was perhaps the heart of black business. There were drugstores, barber shops, beauty shops, AP Trotter's wonderful restaurant, and the Billiken and Sepia clubs. Many events were held at those clubs, and a good time was generally had by all.
What there was in this community in the way of black business was heavily concentrated in Center Street. There's also a dance hall there where many of us as children or young people, teenagers, went every night, every Friday night, I should say, for the weekly dance, which brought East Side, South Side, and West Side blacks together. It was a big social outlet there.
It has been said that many blacks owned their homes, and for the most part, these homes were in fairly well-defined areas. What happened when blacks wanted to move outside those boundaries?
We are still segregated, frankly. And we still need to expand our horizon in this area. And until our housing pattern is improved, we're going to have problems. We're going to continue to have problems. In 1956, I was working with J.D. Moines and Lawrence Oliver. And I believe Edmund Griffin was also on this committee, interracial commission. And it was very much integrated. And at that time, I was very excited and exercised over our housing pattern. And I sort of did have a little knockhead session with some of the real estate people. And we did have quite a session in the newspapers about it. But I think it started the housing situation to move. And I went and talked to realtors. I had all kinds of plans to call. I'll meet in such and such a place. I'll meet and see that particular house. They didn't get a chance to find out where I was living right then, because I would probably told them I was black. So we would meet, and I tell you, I have some hilarious stories about those meetings. The agent didn't know whether this was planned by the owner, and the owner didn't know whether the agent was trying to do it in. So they were having some problems. I didn't help them one way or another. I came to see the house. Have you ever gone to see property of any kind, and the person selling is pointing out all the problems, weaknesses, and things that are wrong? You haven't lived till that day. That's what I went through. And I can be honest, so I kept them busy. We looked in every crack, in every corner, every attic, second floor, bedrooms, got down on the first floor, the kitchens. We went down into the basement, and we went through that routine. And in the meantime, the owner did not know where the agent is standing, and the agent didn't know where the owner was standing. But it just so happened that the wife and I belonged to the same unit of, what is it? League voters. We did. So that kind of added a neat little touch to it. To the drama, shall we say. And I don't know what happened after we got on, but we probably made each other good friends. Did you get the house? I didn't want it.
And then 3 words began to be bandied about. Words that for many blacks were cruel and ugly. Urban renewal and freeway.
They took the property and gave nothing. I wish those that were affected had gone to a competent lawyer, they would come out much, much better.
They removed us from the area, gave us less money. People in the area, the freeway went right through the heart of the inner city of the black community. And it did. It had a devastating effect.
They had to move into a home that was not as decent, quote unquote, as the home they were in, or it meant they had to go into debt. And this was something very difficult for an older person who had their home paid for and thought they were settled for life.
There was little regard given to the people who were forced to move because of the freeway and because of urban renewal.
The advent of the freeway and sharply divided the black community was very traumatic to my grandmother and my family, because immediately after finding out when the news came about it, my grandmother died shortly thereafter because she knew that our home was going to be taken and upset quite a bit. I cannot fully attribute that to coming to the freeway, but the result was devastating to our family.
In the nation, blacks began to shed the yoke of tyranny. The Supreme Court had ruled favorably in the school desegregation case, and one small woman boarded a bus one day in Montgomery, Alabama, and refused to stand up for white passengers when the driver ordered her to do so. A young minister from the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church got other local leaders together and quickly organized a boycott of the city buses. His name, Martin Luther King Jr.
But I have a dream. My poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream. What's going on? Yeah, what's going on? Oh, what's going on? Do yourself a favor and to get your mind. Get yourself together. Everything was right. Do yourself a
How did the civil rights movement affect Des Moines?
I think it's fair to say that the Black Panthers were beginning to influence young people in this part of the country. I, of course, was not part of that since I was considered a fight at that time.
I ran into an individual called Charles Mott at the time, and Charles was telling a bunch of us, and we were on a corner of Lebanon University, telling us that we needed to know our history, but the reason why these things were happening because we did not know our history. So at that time, we went back to school and formed the Black Student Union, the first Black Student Union in the state. We made the transition from there to the Black Panther Party. And we got there and we began thinking like ourselves. And we were committed to a struggle.
The civil rights movement, I think, was like all over the country in the 60s. There was a lot of unrest. We had our lives. We had some fire burns. Back in those days, that really were out front. We had a more traditional, more conservative black in the NAACP. Like that were a little more conservative in their approach. But the NAACP is not looked back in retrospect. Certainly one of the major contributors to change in this community. It was slow. It was not a revolutionary process. I think it was more of an evolutionary process. It was so slow that one could hardly discern that there had been any change.
Change. Why must we always fight for change? The independence of this country was secured on the battleground. The Emancipation Proclamation was written in the blood of this country's citizenry. Blacks got better jobs because of rebellions in Watts, Harlem, and Good Park. There was a man who tried to show the way through peaceful demonstrations, but the assassin's spiteful bullet leaped out and snatched him from us. Another casualty, more rebellions, better jobs, another war, body counts, double-digit inflation, national debt. What is our national debt as blacks? Do we owe, or are we paid in full? Are we going forward or drifting back through time? Where are you, Martin? Who bears your legacy? Is it one or all? Must we die?
We bury Dr. King every year. Instead of taking his program, how much of it have we been able to move forward since the last time we came together? Instead of having all the choirs gathered and singing hymns and praising Dr. King and forgetting about the young people who lost their lives. But we heard that we're not getting war for our young people. We've got young people going to jail. And young people lost in the streets, young people not in school, and so on. And those are the things we should be, and I feel, addressing ourselves to.
Did you know that Keogh was a stream called Bird's Run? Did you know as states go that our struggle's just begun? Do you care if concrete covers up your past? Do you dare to question? The future's coming fast. The gauntlet was hurled right from the start. You're either a part of Des Moines, you can't stand apart. 'Cause just like birds run, you'll be undone. And that would break my heart.
Former Nolan Plaza. I'm guessing 80s on this.
I'm gonna leave the lights down
Because we're going to leave the lights down because that is the end of Black Des Moines Voices Seldom Heard. It was, what'd you think of it? Woo! That was fascinating. But now we're going to show you an interview, as I said, that was done about 3 weeks ago with Verda Williams. Verda was the one doing all the interviewing in this documentary. It was her voice that narrated everything. It was her words that wrote everything you heard. So Barry's going to play this interview with Verda as she reflects on making this documentary. The interview is about 30 minutes long.
Did you know that Keogh was a stream called Bird's Run? Did you know as states go that our struggle's just begun? Do you care if concrete covers up your past? Do you dare to question? The future's coming fast. The gauntlet was hurled right from the start. You're either a part of Des Moines, you can't.
That was just the tail end of that. There we go.
Well, let's start at the beginning. I was born Friday the 13th in 1944. We lived at 1022 West 13th Street. There's 13 letters in my name. There's some more 13s that used to be 13 years old. So I kind of figured 13 is my number. I have two sisters. One has passed away. The other one is asking questions right now. Our mother was one of two black public health nurses in Des Moines. Our Aunt Barbara, we don't know which one came first, but it's kind of a chicken and egg situation. They were the first two black nurses in Des Moines, and public health nurses used to go from home to home and help children. Mom also took it way beyond that. For instance, when polio vaccine came out, the three sisters had to be in the front of the line, and everybody in the neighborhood came. And we were supposed to be soldiers and stand tall like Iowa corn and get our shots. And to this day, I know Beverly doesn't like shots, and I certainly don't like shots. But every time it was time for a booster shot or some kind of immunization, Mom would do that for our neighborhood. Our neighborhood was very tight. You couldn't do anything, and trust me, I got in trouble. I invented trouble. And the word always got home before I did. The biggest was, well, we don't have time for you. But our neighborhood was wonderful. And it was made up of the very richest black man lived right across the street from us. And the very poorest one lived 2 doors down. But everybody owned their own homes. And they took pride. Miss Jenny Peoples, I bet you she was a slave. I bet you that woman was a former slave. And we used to pick the flowers out of her garden, and she would come after us with a broom and run us up and down the street. It was a wonderful, Miss Jones used to make pancakes for me on Saturday. Miss Randall would bake bread every Thursday, and I always happened to be by her door just as it was coming in. It was a wonderful, wonderful, great community. And everybody, they talked today about it takes a village. That was our village.
All right. What compelled you to make this documentary? What did you hope to accomplish? What do you hope to accomplish?
At the time, I was a producer or communications specialist, radio television for the Extension Service at Iowa State University. And WOI was part of the university then. Denny and I had a half-hour program. Denny edited and sometimes shot video. And I produced it, and it was for the Extension Service, which meant each month the program, which was half hour, and it was called Life Force, would cover from home economics to pigs, water, could be water issues, every interest that Extension had something to do with topsoil. We would do documentaries. And one day, Bob Helmers, who was, I believe, president of WI, Denny, general manager, pardon us being so informal, but hey, I'm 71 years old, and I used to have a photographic memory, now it's a negative. But Bob Helmers asked if I could work with WI news reporter Beverly Fisher and kick out a documentary for Black History Month. The idea being that Bev and I would work on it together, and Beverly would get the tapes first, and she would do 2-minute segments every day for a week at WOI. And then I'd get all the tapes and put together the hour show. One day, one of the reporters at WOI went under Beverly's desk and went into the box where the tapes were held and just took as many tapes as she wanted and recorded over. And she recorded over our history. And I think that kind of put me in mind of the title, Black Des Moines, Voices Seldom Heard. Because somebody's always snatching tapes and snatching pieces of our history. You don't hear much about it. I didn't know hardly any of the stuff that I found at the Historical Society that's in this documentary. In any event, what we did was we invited all the Black leaders to come to the Blanton's home. And Beverly was in one room and I was in the other, and we divided them down the middle and we re-interviewed everybody. And sometimes mistakes can lead to good fortune. And I think we got better interviews the second time around.
Practice run.
Very good. I think people would be amazed at the total number of hours it takes to produce a 1-hour documentary. How many hours of research, writing, shooting, editing did it take out of your life to create Black Des Moines Voices Seldom Heard?
If I could answer that question, it'd be a miracle, because I don't have any idea. What I can tell you is I had to continue the half-hour television show Life Force. My job went on. The only condition that was given for me to be able to work on Black Des Moines was that I continued my regular job. So, one thing I've always done, even when I was at NBC, I did lots of documentaries. And documentaries come in different styles. For instance, when Duke Ellington died, we did our documentary, and we spent 3 full days and nights editing everything we could get, going to the library sometimes. Well, I won't go that far, but we put those things out in 3 days sometimes. Sometimes you can have Ken Burns can take 5 years or more to do Civil War documentaries. On this one, when I had the time, I'd go down to the old Historical Society, which was across the street from the Capitol. And I just kind of lived there. And I remember I was on the 1915 Des Moines chapter of the NAACP and Mr. Brown, Joe Brown. And I asked the librarian, it says here that you guys have the original charter for the NAACP. She said, well, you know, we have it, but we lost it. Well, I retain things and I dream about things. It's kind of my technique, which means I'm always writing, and I'm constantly, I unfold it into my life. So I was obsessed with finding that darn chart. And one day I went to get a drink of water, and I looked behind. Remember those old wooden file cabinets? I looked behind and I saw part of the frame. And I pushed it a little bit, and I saw N.A. And I let out an audible scream, and you don't do that in the library, but I did. And everybody jumped up, and we got some guy to come over there, move it, and there it was on the wall, the original charter for the 1915 Des Moines chapter of the NAACP. So, how much time? Lots of time. Can't tell you an exact number, but a lot of time. When it came to writing it, once again, I dreamt it. And after I'd done enough dreaming, it took me about 2 days to write the script. Because I had my ducks lined up. I make little index cards, and there's various techniques to doing things. And I had visuals, and You have to write to get permission to use, for instance, the slave that traveled with Lewis and Clark, whose name was York. I think it was Salem University, Salem, Oregon. I don't know who has that painting. It was in a book, and I wrote to them and asked for permission to be able to use the picture, and they gave it to me. Sometimes you have to do the same thing for music. The fortunate thing is, this was for a news organization, and news organizations pretty much have negotiated ahead of time with ASCAP and BMI for music. So where you see this program on YouTube, you don't hear the music. Well, when I make a documentary, 60% of the documentary is the music. I carry you along with my music. And I had music, Vinny and I had stacks, music from the 1890s, and I had them by decade. I had pictures stacked up by decade. Anyway, it takes a lot of organization and it takes a lot of time, but I can't give you a total time of how long it took. Of course, we had a deadline, Black History Month, so.
Where were the outdoor scenes filmed? Because it looked like a rural South, the rural South.
I love this question. You won't believe it, but it was all filmed right off of Interstate 80 at Living History Farms. Every scene. The scene where my daughter and my niece come up as slaves in the wagon, being pulled by a farmer in this big wagon. One of my production assistants made the bonnets, and we got the costumes from Living History Farms, and the actors were members of my family. So we went to the 1900s farm where Manny gets a glass of lemonade. We went down the main street where my niece Julie starts the shot pushing a ring with the broom. And we passed my now deceased brother-in-law Leonard, who's the blacksmith, and my sister Sheila comes, who is now deceased, comes out of the general store, and my nephew Jay is, I can't remember what Jay, oh, he's sweeping the area. So we did all of that, except for my daughter and niece in the wagon. That was one continuous shot that Denny was able to pull off without using the kind of Hollywood equipment. In fact, when we finished that day, the director of Living History Farms said they'd never seen a film crew come in and do everything we did in the short period of time that we did it in, because usually they take days and days and days. They build dolly tracks. It takes forever to do those scenes. So we were pretty happy about that.
Very good. When it's all said and done, I know you must have felt a great sense of achievement and relief. But how did making this wonderful documentary change your life at the time?
I don't think it changed my life. What did happen was we got requests from all over the state. We got a great review from the Des Moines Register. I think he reviewed it twice even, because it was replayed again. And as a consequence, I traveled all over the state, still had to do my job, but I took the CD all over the, well, it was a 3/4-inch video at that time, all over the state, showed it and talked to many people who'd never seen black people before. And it was hard. It was hard because I was asked questions that made me very angry. And it was difficult to keep my composure and not lose it. Nobody came right out and called me any names. I do want to say that. But it was tantamount to calling me names. Some of the questions that I got, they were insulting. I like to think that this program did affect the people that saw it. Not me so much. I lived it. Now let me tell you a little bit about what I lived. My cousins, and tell you the family rule, you either said to mom's friends, Mr. and Mrs., or Aunt and Uncle. And when it's Aunt and Uncle, you get cousins. And we had cousins. For the most part, it was just me and my two sisters, and 40 cousins that weren't really cousins. Anyway, Aunt Barbara and Uncle Manuel lived on Jefferson. And at the base, at the top of the hill next to Cassidy School, and at the bottom is 13th Street. And we lived at 1022 West 13th. I think I mentioned that before in my 13 diatribe. I learned how to ride a bicycle, a boy's bicycle. It was painful because I kept falling on the bar. I didn't think I'd ever have children after that. When I was 6 years old, I didn't even know where kids came from. But it was, that hill was like a test of Eagle Scoutery or growing up, of being a strong brave. And we had a hill like that on 12th Street down at from where we lived, or Crocker Street, where we would make trains with sleds or trains with wagons. And there was a tree whose roots were coming up, and if you didn't hit that right, the first leader of and they always let me lead. See, I was so dumb. I got so much because my sisters knew how to appeal to my vanity. And they wouldn't let me do really dumb things. But I would leave that stuff. If you didn't hit that tree limb just right, that root just right, you lost some teeth. And I later lost my 2 front teeth, but it was at another sled area that I was responsible for. Anyway, the hill on 13th Street, at the base of the street was the woods. And if you could stay in the woods for what, man, 5-10 minutes? I mean, it was, and at twilight when the sun was going down. Now, let's keep in mind, there were about 6 to 10 trees in the woods. And the waterway, which we thought was like a massive river, was more like the leaky faucet. But in our minds, because we had such imaginations, we had the radio back then. The radio forced you to have an imagination. You had to visualize things. And so the woods were magnificent. And if you could stay in there for 10 minutes, you'd really accomplish something. So that area, when I'd come back to visit, I always went back to that area because that was part of my growing up and part of my fulfillment. Part of when the white teachers were telling me all I was ever going to do was iron clothes or clean somebody's house, that why am I taking college courses because I'll never go to college. I mean, discouraged me every step of the way from Crocker Grade School to Roosevelt High School to Drake University when I was majoring in theater, and they told me I couldn't act as a lead in a play because Des Moines wasn't ready for a black woman to kiss a white man. I just changed majors and got into radio television. I said, I'll produce myself. 13th, that's where I learned to push on. My mother, one of the greatest people in the world, she instilled that in us, that we can be anything, do anything. We were capable of being whatever we wanted to be. And now I come back to Des Moines in 1980 from New York, from working at NBC. And the majority of drive-by killings, shootings, little babies getting hit by bullets because somebody shot it while they were driving by, are at 13th and Jefferson. What I want to say about the freeway and what I tried to say in Black Des Moines Voices Seldom Heard is that that damn freeway came through Des Moines and ripped the homes from under the feet of Black people, of our village, of our community. It took away Center Street and every Black business that Blacks owned, restaurants, pharmacies. Ando had a beauty shop, Burley Beauty Shop, where lustrous girls made gorgeous girls. We had everything we needed, and the freeway took it all. And the realtors got together, and they decided where they wanted us to move, and you can see it today. Oh, yeah. Over 23rd, around one of those cemeteries, the Woodland Cemetery. The worst one was up by the old Washington Irving Junior High. I could smell the house before they opened the door. And it was my math teacher from Washington Irving. And the place reeked of urine. And I said, Mom, let's get out of here, let's get out of here. And she was magnificent. She was thinking of the teacher's feelings and not wanting to hurt his feelings, rather than the fact that the realtor was pushing it in our face, that this is where we belong. As it turned out, we were the last family to leave. Ours was the last house to be torn down because eminent domain shall remain. They didn't offer my mother enough money. We didn't move. The only way we could leave the home, my sisters and I, is if we went together, because all the other homes around us were torn down. Finally, Mom got the price that she wanted. And the kicker was that the Human Rights Director, Malcolm Higgins, at that time, late 50s, early 60s, it's late 50s, sold his home to my mother, and we integrated 38th Street. Not only did we integrate 38th Street, but we joined Grace Methodist Church and integrated that church. So my story is Black Des Moines Voices Seldom Heard. And I think the trouble that we have today is rooted in that damn freeway. It took it all away. I don't think you'd see the crime you see now. I don't think you'd see the disenfranchisement. Because most of the kids when we were growing up went to college. They worked on with the DOT in the summer. They'd be passing court and they saved their money to go to college. Kids don't have that thirst anymore. It's not there. And it all had to do with owning the home, having your own business, having role models, Big Park. We had 4th of July, we had meets, we had picnics every weekend. I mean, that stuff doesn't exist anymore. And it's all lost in the ether world. The computers, no good. But I tell you, look at the Flint, Michigan incident that's going on right now. Because it's real close to what happened to Des Moines with the freeway. And the governor of that state took out the duly elected Black officials, the Black mayor, the city council people, and put in his own people. And they decided to change the water from the Detroit one of the lakes, the Great Lakes, one of the Great Lakes, to the Flint River. And it leached lead, and the kids are ruined. For 2-3 years, they've been drinking this poisonous concoction.
And they didn't even know it.
One of my favorite sayings is, those who can't remember the past are condemned forever to repeat it. We're seeing that now with Flint, Michigan. We're seeing that with Ferguson, Missouri. We're seeing them take away the vote. We're seeing all the things we marched for and fought for and risked our lives for and lost Malcolm, Medgar, Martin. All of these things are being summarily taken away from us again. People have to wake up. Black Des Moines is a little pin saying, this is the past, don't let it happen again. Wake up. Plans were made, we're redistricting, gerrymandering, so that certain political parties had gains and others losses. In other words, they couldn't be elected because they no longer had strongholds. Please, please pay attention to what is going on. Don't let certain politicians come through and just say inflammatory things, but never tell you what they're going to do to make America great again. I haven't heard America great. I've just heard things that make me angry, that make me afraid. And there seems to be a movement nowadays to keep you angry at one racial group or another, to keep you afraid of one racial group or another. And we have to be careful, because the comparison has been made, and I'm not saying names here. Remember the past or repeat it. This is how Hitler came into being. People didn't listen, they reacted. They responded. They were allowed to be manipulated. They were undereducated. What's happening in our schools today? Kids thought Judge Judy was part of the Supreme Court. Help me. I hope you enjoyed watching Black Des Moines Voices Seldom Heard, and I hope that you'll think about these things. They deserve to be thought about a lot. Take care.
All right, the lights are up. How about it? Let's hear it for that. And the extra treat was to hear from Berta herself. She said a lot of things that we need to think about. So I hope that you were moved like I was moved the first time I saw it. And I see a lot of our seniors here who I know saw some faces and some memories and some people that meant a lot to them. So,
my 60 years is young.
Lord just got a good suggestion. Just a sec, Terry.
Well, you don't get away that easy.
Yeah, we're not done with you yet. We wanted to open up the floor for maybe 15 minutes. For anybody that wants to come up and talk about Black Des Moines Voices Seldom Heard, what it meant to you, any memories you have, if you were around back in the day, when Center Street was jumping and before the freeway, If there was somebody you saw in there that you remember, if there's a story you have to share about your upbringing, the floor is open. Anyone want to come up and share a story? I know the area that Verda grew up in because I didn't live far from there. I stayed at 16th and College until I was 10 years old. I know that Chautauqua area, Wooded Park. It creeped me out. I didn't even go over there. That was too far from home anyway. Anybody want to come forward? Just come on forward.
She said 16th and College.
This cord won't go that far.
It's not a wireless.
No, not a wireless.
Yeah, my name is Natalie Rivera. I'm originally from Prairie City. It's wonderful to be back in this space. I actually was telling, sorry, I'm going to forget your name now. What starts with an M? But that I actually came in high school here to a Peace and Justice youth retreat. So it brought back a lot of memories to walk into this room. And thank you so much for organizing this wonderful event for the community. And just what struck me is that it's so important to tell these stories, these lives that were lived so fully, and experiences that were had that are not all beautiful, but in telling the story, it transforms into something very powerful and beautiful. And I loved that she kind of brought it back to the present at the end with her interview. I sat this afternoon with a 17-year-old Honduran boy who is one of the young people who've crossed the border within the past year. He spent 5 months in detention under U.S. government custody and is now being fast-tracked on deportation. So again, there are many, many examples in our world today of how these justice issues, race issues are coming into our lives. And I think the most powerful thing we can do is to not stay quiet about it and tell the stories. So thank you for giving airtime to those stories.
Sharing that. Very good comments. I know this man.
I know this lady. Okay. I'm Milton Young, Mississippi. I came here in 1956, and I was down on 7th Street during this time we are talking about. And during that time, I was Mr. Hardaway barbershop. I started out shining shoes, being a porter there. Some of those people in that barbershop I was close to. And I see one man there, back here, he won't get up, but he's been quiet all since I know him. But he broke a lot of ground that I know, and that's Mr. Spencer. He come from the police department. And I always looked up to him. His name Bob Webb. I worked with him. As I got grown up, I walked with him, he talked with me. I was a young man, about 19. But one thing I took honor, I listened to the old people. And now that I'm 78, I've seen what the Moines he come from. But I must say this to y'all. They were close together. Exactly what they said when they broke us in the street. Seemed like they broke up our whole race. They put us over here on University. I got my home over here on College 2 years ago. You couldn't even hardly go across University when I first come here. I'm just telling you, those people fought and went through it. Young people, black and white, let's get close together because the thing is winding up. I'm not going to talk too much about the racist problem stuff. That has pretty very well been broken. But I've learned one thing since I've been here, and been a Christian, we must come close together. And I'll tell you one thing else, we got to stop being divided in Christianity too, because this is the thing where we're bothering us. And I tell y'all, if I don't see you no more, y'all will see me up and beyond.
Thanks, Dan. Anybody else? Got a couple more people coming up. Just come on up and let's start a line. Just try to keep it 2 to 3 minutes because we do have to be out of the church at a certain time.
Just want to take a few minutes. I'm Dennis Jones. I grew up in Des Moines, and
and then I later moved away and came back. But one of the things I'll say is, growing up in Des Moines, it always had a sense of you could get along with people. There are people that would speak with you and look at you as a person, but then there were the other sides where people just summed you up in the first 5 seconds they saw you. One of the things that gave us strength in my family growing up were we knew people like Judge Glantine. He'd come over and eat pancakes with us on Saturdays and really kind of talk to you and support you and kind of point you in the right direction. Later on, Judge McGee came around as far as the legal system. A number of the attorneys that were around, different people had very positive atmosphere for us and helped keep our family on the right track, because even though, like you said in the show, sometimes teachers would say that you're not college material, you're not going to go very far, and things like that. And you just had to come home, and as long as you were surrounded by positive mindsets and things that really helped you. And I remember one time I was talking to a guy, and he said, "Son, let me tell you," he said, "anytime you're south of the Canadian border, you're in the South." So he said, "You remember that." And he said, "You learn how to walk and think and survive, and just one foot in front of the other, and listen to what your elders have to tell you. And then you keep going." So I want to thank all those that helped me grow up, and some are in this room. But I think Iowa still has a very positive atmosphere overall. And I say that after being in different cities and things like that. But I'm glad to see this tonight. And it's just brought back a lot of memories. Cat's Drugstore. I remember going into Cat's Drugstore, and when you look 10 feet behind you, there's somebody following you like this. You know, I'm like, oh, you know, and everything. Don't touch nothing. Don't touch nothing. Sure, you just go in and we'll get some ice cream and things like that, and we would leave usually. So we'd go by Cat's Drugstore. That was one of the places. But then other places look like that. But we did experience that. So thanks for your time.
Okay, one more and then I'll let her
My name is Lori Jones, and I just want to share real quick. I've lived like Berta through some of this. The freeway part is the most that I remember, because we were the last house before the freeway. And so we kind of watched it. Streets that we used to run up and down became dead ends. So we watched the freeway basically gobble up our neighborhood. Friends that we used to play with and run up and down the street, now we have a great big 235 freeway cutting right through the middle of our neighborhood. One of our friends, not familiar with what was going on up there, ran on the freeway and actually was killed. So it really did cut a big divide in the neighborhood and destroyed a lot of the friendships and parted people. It was devastating to the Moines. That's what I remember the most about it. Sure.
What year was 235 created?
Oh, it was over several years. The years I'm looking at are the late 60s.
The question was, when was 235 where the freeway voted?
It was like 19, I was gonna say, I'm from Minneapolis, and we lived on 35W, which it's not just Des Moines that they tore up black neighborhoods on purpose. And so we had 35, well, it's 35W. The only reason I remember 1966 is because I got my first kiss on that dirt. But it was devastating. It was devastating.
I was born that year.
What happened here in Des Moines happened in Minneapolis. Happens, one of the oldest black neighborhoods in St. Paul got totally tore up, which was the Rondo neighborhood. Now they call it Rondo Days. So it was purposely done because, the Black Panthers were no joke. And they had to do something to separate us, because that was a big deal. But the other thing is, like I said, I'm from Minnesota, but a lot of my in-laws are here, and as I was watching that, I was laughing, I have to call my ex-husband and let him know he was in this video here. But a lot of things that she was talking about, my ex-sister-in-law would tell me a lot of that information. And one of the things she said that particularly for young folks, you really have to learn the past because we're repeating it. And when she said something about it felt like Nazi Germany, there is one of the people that is running for office that reminds me of a person that was dangerous back then. Did you watch how I did that? I think I was good.
Yeah, don't need to mention the name.
It scares me half to death. And so we have to be purposeful, all of us, whether you're black, white, Asian, Muslim, everything. Because they're trying to divide us, and this is a stereotype. So talk to elders.
Thanks, everyone. That good conversation. Terry, come on up. This is Terry Wells. I'll let him introduce himself a little more and talk about burns.
Good evening, people.
Good evening.
Good evening, Terry.
First of all, how many people love the Edna Griffith section? Round of applause for Edna Griffith and her intelligence and her wit.
Oh, yeah.
And also to the two Lorries. They did a wonderful job putting this together tonight. So give them a round of applause. And I'm sure everyone in here believes that old, middle-aged, young, teenagers, high schoolers, all need to remember the history and need to know the history. And black history, African history is very, very important. The reason I'm here tonight is exactly what you saw tonight about urban development 50 years ago, and you've heard it from people here and people in the documentary, but it's happening again 50 years later. And it's happening with a little small church, a piece of African American history being chipped away. You heard Miss Verna Williams talk about the charter that was lost, or the barbershop that was torn down, or whatever, keep chipping away at African American history. I'm going to go ahead and say it because I have it written down and my wife says it all the time and we heard it at least twice in the video. But those who forget history are condemned to repeat it. So I'm here tonight to ask you folks to come together and stop this chipping away and destroying of African American history. We need a committee to get together and to sign up, to talk with the city, talk with the developers. Will you give me my pen, please, or hand this around? So if you'd like to be on a committee, I'm asking for a call of action tonight. Now, I've heard some grumblings even here tonight. Well, it's already sold, it's a done deal. It's this, it's that. People don't believe that hype. I'm the same person that Christine Hensley said, the shelter is going on Keyaway. Don't get in front of the train, you'll get run over. Where is the shelter today? We're not against homeless, but we didn't want the shelter on Keogh, and we stuck together as a group of people. So last night, I was at the planning and zoning. Now basically, they'd already decided in their mind that they're going to rezone it because it's on city council for Monday night at 5 o'clock. Now the only people that were there that spoke against it was myself and the lovely Miss Estes. And she knows what's going to happen, the chipping away of African American history. What's next? Corinthian? her house, something over in Cheetah Park. We have to draw a line in the sand now. We have to make a stand now, even though this is a little small church. Now, luckily, after the meeting, 3 of the planning and zoning people really listened. Now, they did move it to Monday. They got their 2/3 vote, 6-3. So the first thing I'm asking is anybody that can be at City Council at 5 o'clock Monday, just to say that we don't want it rezoned right now. Let's let this process work out. Let's let the community, let's let the faith leaders, let's let the business people, let's all get at the table. But after the meeting, the developer came and spoke with me. And he said, well, we didn't know there was a neighborhood. And we didn't know there was another church. And we didn't know Mrs. Estes. And we went to talk to the Downtown Neighborhood Association. And we didn't talk to Cheetah Park. And we didn't talk to Corinthian. Well, good Lord, we've been here a lot longer than they have. I grew up here, my wife grew up here, you all grew up in here. We've been here. We ain't going nowhere, so don't say you didn't know we were here. But now, he's willing to sit down and discuss what we want, how we can do it. So there's a piece of paper going around, and I do have permission from Pastor Whitfield. Corinthian is not doing this, it's the community. It's Cheetah Park. We are in the church tonight, and he said I can come and talk about this because it's important. Now, for all of you that don't quite know what they want to do, there's an old Joni Mitchell song. Da 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 da. Pay paradise to put up a parking lot. They want to tear it down for a damn parking lot. For a parking lot. Now, I talked to the developer, and I said, look, you're going to put some apartments over there. We're not against apartments. We're not against more people in the community. But use that building as an office, as a daycare, as a community center, something. So we as a community need to come together and have a meeting. Now, I don't have a date, but if you'll give me an email, a phone number, I will get with Pastor Whitfield, I will get with Cheetah Park, I will find a date in the next 10 days, and we'll get together. He is willing to meet within the next 3 weeks. If they don't close the deal, and for all of you that think it's a done deal, this is what it says for Monday night, item 27. They want to change it to a C3, excuse me. I'm probably going to lose some paperwork here. But basically, Burns still owns the building. What was said last night, oh, I got to find it. It's here. Okay, here it is. It's a request from Hubble Realty, the purchaser, represented by Steve Neubauer, to rezone the property. The subject property is owned by Burns United Methodist Church. So it has not been sold, it's not been transferred, they're trying to rezone it, they're trying to do this on the undercover. They did a meeting at the end of the year, December 21st. It's not even 60 days later, and they want to rezone it. They haven't talked to the neighborhood, they haven't talked to the church. I'm asking for your help. We stopped the shelter, let's stop them from tearing down African American history. If you've got any questions, I'll feel free. Lori told me to get done in 5 minutes. So, I'm passionate about this. I believe people can overcome money. People can overcome government if we get together and talk and work it out. Thank you for your time.
that. Information is power. Well, that's the end of our program, everybody.
Verda told us to organize.
Verda did tell us to organize, and she told us to wake up and don't sleep.
That's what we gotta do.
Don't sleep. So thank you very much for coming, everyone. Thanks, Terry. And I hope you enjoy the rest of Black History Month.
That will do it for my stream. So I think I will go to that council meeting next Monday, and I will live stream that council meeting where this agenda item will be brought up. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes. The city council meetings start generally at like 4:30 p.m. Central Time on Mondays. So if I don't stream anything before then, it'll be Monday, 4:30 p.m. Central, Des Moines City Council. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the stream.